Hello, everyone, and welcome to the B2B Engagement Podcast. We are very, very fortunate today to have with us one of the leading experts in creating a digital sales journey. With us is Mark Weber, Vice President in the Global Sales Organization at IBM, and he's responsible for sales, digitization, and client commerce, and many other things, actually. So, Mark, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Gavin, for having the opportunity to have I think, a great discussion with you on extremely important topics.
Well, we appreciate it. And I think this is a timely topic, but it's also something that I think is going to be with us for quite a while. You've seen a lot of change in the world of sales, and most recently with respect to this trend towards digital sales. What has struck you the most about how this change has come about and what's really different now in the world of B2B sales and how digital has become so important?
So from our perspective, the lines between our traditional face-to-face sales, digital or inside sales have completely blurred. We're all using video, we're all using phone, we're all using email. We're all using some sort of chat capabilities here, which means that the face-to-face motion is becoming more and more similar to what I would call the traditional inside or digital sales motion. I think the biggest change happened through COVID, and COVID has really brought that to light. If you look at pre-COVID, there were 4 channels that were used. Post-COVID, we're talking about 10 different channels. Social is becoming more and more important. And as we know, Gavin, the clients want to actually do self-education, self-service more and more before they actually get in contact with sales. I think the number that I saw lately was 78% of the client journey is happening online. And then only in the last roughly 22%, a client would actually reach out to the sales rep and ask for either a proposal or for a discussion, for a demo, a trial, things like that. But even those areas are starting to blur as well. So what I'm seeing on our side is that if you don't offer a trial, if you don't offer a demo, people might be going away due to that. And there was an interesting trust radius study performed last year where 54% of the clients would not likely buy if you don't offer demo or trials for free. So I think we're seeing a lot of changes happening in the way that people want to engage and people are engaging right now, and how far they are down the journey already from a sales point of view until they truly engage with a sales rep.
You talked about the customers requiring free trials or demos, and you talked about their journey. This is very much like what happens in the B2C world. And I think we're seeing a blurring of how people behave in their personal lives and in their business world lives as well. And I think that creating quite a shakeup in the way that B2B organizations think about their go-to-market strategy as well.
I'm in complete agreement here. The go-to-market strategies are massively changing. The traditional ways how to reach clients is completely changing as well. So if we go 15, 20 years back, you still had, the paper flyers hitting your mailbox. You had fax coming in, email marketing, everybody was calling everybody, and people are not reacting on these channels anymore. So how do you develop a channel that attracts clients and new prospects? And what is the best approach for doing that? And I'm a strong believer that social is going to be extremely important to attract people, and building that, what I would call the network that gives you the content when you need it, so that you can actually search for it using then third-party platforms that lead you to the potential solution that you're searching for. And then only the journey on a IBM website would happen, or on a Dell website would happen.
And I think that what that means is that we need to rethink several aspects of our business. One of them is what technical infrastructure we build to support that, right? The back end systems, the infrastructure, because as you go through that journey, you just mentioned you're talking to people who go to these third party websites, then they come to your website and then they engage. How do you keep track of who's going where and what they're doing so that you can provide them with that best experience that's most relevant and it's not redundant to them? So that infrastructure is really important. And then the second thing is the organization itself, as you talked about earlier, almost like a batch process of inside sales, outside sales, the marketing for lead generation, all of the things that were highly distinct. And then the last part, you used a very important term. You talked about the customer's journey. We used to, I think, frame it as a buyer's journey. And I believe that that's an obsolete term as well. It's really a problem-solving journey. And now what we're doing is we're building an infrastructure to support the customer's problem-solving journey that includes learning, it includes identifying what different solutions are out there, how to evaluate them, doing those evaluations, providing them that support, so that ultimately it's the problem we're solving rather than the product we're selling.
I'm not 100% sure I fully agree with that point here, because in what we're seeing right now, the times have changed where you had like the 10 strongest B2B companies partitioning the market. Now you have all of these startups coming up. You have all of these smaller companies coming up that only provide a very specific solution for a very targeted need. And they're highly successful in that narrow space. And then you have larger companies that could provide more the solution framework that allows that to happen. So there is a competition happening right now between these. And on our side, we're trying to have very clearly defined products that we want to sell. And the consultative approach, specific use cases.
Yeah, and I think that your point is a good one. I think when you are competing on the basis of product capabilities, the larger organizations that have more experience, like the IBMs, IBMs, have the ability to raise the level of awareness of the customer as to what their real problems are or are going to be, as opposed to simply feature function evaluation on a product basis. And I think it's the years of experience larger organizations have that can predict what the future problems will be when a customer selects point solutions, let's say in 10 different areas around security or storage or whatever it is. They have 10 different vendors. And then down the road, they're going to run into those integration problems and scaling problems and other kinds of data homogenization problems. And I think the challenge that big companies have in competing with those smaller single point startups is to not let the customer journey be focused solely on those features and functions, but to reveal their undisclosed needs. And I think that requires a more value-oriented story, which is to help the customer reveal for themselves rather than somebody lecturing to them about what their problem is.
And that's exactly what my strongest belief is. If we don't have that client journey mapped out against exactly the points that you just mentioned in regards of, it's not about the feature functions. That is a key element in the client journey when they get to it, but it's really about what is your use case and how can we support that use case and what is the end solution. So fully agree with you.
I think that the points you just made are even more important when you consider that the number of people involved in making buying decisions has grown, right? So it used to be 1 or 2 people. Now we have 3, 5, 8 people in different organizations involved.
We're seeing that really across all countries, geos right now. The amount of people that are being engaged, 9 is now the standard. 9 people engaged in a buying process. And that starts off with the influencers, like the testers. I'm downloading a trial, I'm using the trial, I'm happy about the trial. I tell my CIO, then the CISO, the CFO, the CMO is getting involved. So you have all kinds of personas that are getting involved into that decision process. And it has to do, one, with ensuring it is the solution that we can expand upon for the future. It is not something that we're going to implement for 1 year and then next year we're going to reconsider. And the other thing is, it's about the information that is needed. And a study that I read lately was suggesting that there is a 43% additional need of information to be presented, from business cases, use cases, justification, until the final decision is being made. And which means the amount of time that is needed to purchase has now extended by 30 to 40%. You have the involvement of people that are not used to be involved. They need to understand, what does the product do and how is it going to impact us, and what's the benefit of it, what is the ROI of it, and things like that.
If you're going to have to deliver, let's say 40% more information, customers are demanding that self-service, there is now a huge imperative to integrate that digital sales function with the marketing team, so that the marketing organization delivers or develops that information, so that at the right time, that digital sales infrastructure can make it available to the customer when they need it, particularly for all of those 9 different buying entities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it starts off with, how does that client journey happens and how much information will the client get delivered based on the persona. And then as soon as they reach the point where they're going to interact with a sales rep or an SDR, these people need to have all of that information at their fingertips as well, so that they can really deliver a technical demo on the fly, which means that the skill set of these people have massively changed over time as well. From, I'm taking a call and then I pass it on to an expert that passes it on to another expert, and then you have 5 experts sitting in a room discussing a potential solution here. That is massively changing. We're expecting in IBM that our sellers are very technical savvy, that they can actually do a demo, that they can help a client through a trial without any issues, that they can explain the product, they understand what use cases, and they understand features and functionalities.
That's a big change for an organization that's built around a process over decades. How is that being received by the sales organization, the team members themselves?
It is a transformational journey. Just as an example, we all went through technical learning, and how is this playing a role on offering level, on product level, and what are the specific use cases, so that regardless who it is, marketeer, seller, someone in a customer fulfillment organization, would actually be able to explain what and how and why.
Yeah. Then no longer can we say, that's not my job. It's always their job now, right? I think that requires both a level of technical knowledge, but also an attitude, an approach that says, I own this, I'm willing to do this, this is my job. And so that's more of a psychographic that you have to have within the team members.
Indeed. And I think we're all on a constant transformation here, and it got massively accelerated through COVID and now through the economic impacts that we're seeing across the globe here. And in the B2B business, these disruptors will continue on to disrupt, and larger companies will have to adapt to these disruptions. And we need to be clear that we constantly have to reinvent the way that we approach things. I was mentioning at the beginning how sales has changed from fax, email, phone calls, things like that, to buyers going onto a journey. And I'm with the GDPR rules here in Europe, CCCP in the US, Latin America adopting GDPR, and Asia Pacific is going in a similar direction. That means that the window to reach out to clients is getting smaller and smaller, which means that you have to be extremely innovative in the way that you contact potential new buyers and prospects. So I think this is an era where we're going to see a lot of changes happening, not only to the buying behavior, but also to the sales behavior, and really defining new sales methodologies And I strongly believe that things like having the ability on a website to demonstrate a product to multiple personas for multiple use cases and introducing the potentials of that solution right at the fingertip, where the CRO or the CFO or the CISO all feel comfortable with looking at that and learning about it, and maybe not making the decision, but understanding it to the point where they want to see more is going to be extremely important, because that is going to be the methodology from our perspective, that we allow people to get more integrated into the buying process. And then the next important thing is, what are the call to actions that you want to implement?
Well, I think one of the things that you require, if that's the case, is that it's not a fixed set of calls to action at certain points, that it can change depending on what that buyer has seen or what that influencer has seen, who they are and where they are in that journey. Because at some point they may, a call to action traditionally might be, schedule a demo or talk to a rep, but it also might be, do you want to see more use cases, right? Or would you like to see more technical detail at this stage? And that, again, depends on your knowledge. And you've really got to be smart about what you glean from the buyer's journey and who they are. This points to the notion that you don't have a lot of time in that journey to lose a customer. In other words, it doesn't take them long to say, I'm going somewhere else, or I didn't get my answer. So every interaction has to be really, really well orchestrated. And I think that points to the need that you mentioned with the sales reps having to be well versed so that they, at any point, they can provide the information they need. And we have a question from one of the podcast listeners here who says, as buyers are more internally integrated, and this is directed to you, Mark, it seems more of the front end of the sale needs to address an entire proof of concept support process and even user acceptance testing. Is that what you're finding?
Not all of the elements, but a lot of the elements, yes. The proof of concept needs to be addressed. Support processes are definitely something here. User acceptance testing is part of the implementation side, but it's really about how do you ensure that you have those items spelled out and called out during the discussion, so that the client, the customer, the prospect really feels that it's a holistic approach on how do you implement it, what do you need for that implementation, and what are the next steps after that. I think that's extremely important. Let me go back to, Gavin, what you said in regards of reaction time. If you, Gavin, go to a vendor's website, what is your expectation to get a reaction back?
Well, it's pretty quick, right? We want to be answered either, if it's chat, right away, and email certainly within a couple of hours, I would imagine.
So the latest studies say the reaction time should be within 30 minutes. Chat immediately, phone immediately, email within 30 minutes. If you don't react in that time frame, people have already moved over to someone else. 25 years ago, reaction time was like 2 to 3 days, and that was accepted. Today, that is definitely not accepted anymore.
Yeah. I think this is also part of the process of figuring out where they are in their journey. People come to learn because they have different kinds of questions. So I might come to you and say, Mark, can you help me identify what's going on with my system right now? Why isn't it working? Right. The next question I might ask is, okay, I know exactly what's happening. I'm weak in this particular area, or I have a vulnerability. What are my alternatives? What can I do about it? As you go through this, there's always different questions in the customer's mind as to why they're there. Right? And I think from the digital journey point of view, we have to be ready to answer those different questions, and not necessarily in a linear fashion. They may go forward and then come back, and then go forward and come back. Because let's say I somehow figure out how to do a 30-minute reaction time, but I'm answering the wrong question. They want to know the nature of their problem, and I'm telling them, look at my product, right? That's not going to work either, right?
Indeed.
So I think we have to be even smarter now than we used to be because things are nonlinear and they're a little bit more complex or a lot more complex.
Indeed. And going back to the question that was raised to both of us here, it's really about giving that holistic information back to the client so that they're being handheld through this journey here, that they can address the specific questions that they have, regardless if it's online or offline, regardless if it's in a virtual forum where people can exchange and talk about that. I think that is getting more and more important. We're seeing that, especially with the developers, that the developers forums are getting larger and larger, and they're getting self-sufficient. And the best example from our perspective is always Apple. If you look at who's actually answering all of the questions, it is Apple users. It's not Apple themselves anymore. So I think that that is becoming a huge trend as well.
In these online communities, I think, is there's got to be authenticity. You can't pretend that your product does these things if it really doesn't, because it's going to be revealed very quickly in these online communities that this is the actual reality versus what the company is saying. That requires empathy. It requires that you are prepared to suspend your needs right now to serve their needs, right? So I think those two emotional dimensions, empathy and authenticity, are another aspect of what's really become much more important. And it always was important to be truthful and honest and ethical and everything, but it was never as, I think, required as today to be transparent and authentic when you have so much more of the customer generated feedback, reviews, answers to questions than it is now.
I fully agree. I fully agree. And I think there is a huge potential to gain additional information from our existing clients, which we're not using to the full breadth right now, is really using that information our client calls that reveals what do we need to change for a product, for an approach, for solutions, et cetera, that can be fed back into product management to enhance and make that product better, but also ensuring that marketing teams understand these are the messages that are resonating with our clients. These are the messages that are not resonating. Go do more from X versus Y here. We have a wealth of information, and I strongly believe that AI is going to help us reveal all of that information and utilize that information to make the products better, to make the sales motions better, to make marketing hit the right audiences, to allow the right messaging to happen, and to unveil at the end of the day potential new use cases which the company per se has not thought about, but customers are actually asking for it. So there is a huge opportunity from my perspective.
Yeah. There's so much potential if you think about it. We've moved well beyond transactional sales to a much more relationship-oriented process, which requires our integration, as you said, from product marketing to product management to marketing and sales, all thinking about the customer first and what they need, and then using that to guide everything that we do after that. Otherwise, the silos internally prevent that.
I think the transactional situations will continue on, but you used a word which I really like is empathy. It's that empathy that will bring the customer back to you. And it's empathy and a relationship that will keep the customer aligned to the company per se. But I think the times have changed where you're only doing relationship selling to you're doing transactional selling with building a relationship for a certain period of time. What we have seen in the past in IBM was one of these companies, I believe, that did an outstanding job in relationship selling, really, especially with the larger clients, in opening up their toolkit and saying, okay, what is it that you would like to have? We have everything for you. Let's just define what is needed for your company. To now where it is the offering focus, Here's a very specific product. How do we how do we build the right use case for you for that specific product? So I think those times have changed a bit.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I hadn't considered sort of the need to be able to facilitate transactional relationships if that's what's required at the time, and not sort of have to oversell or create more than what's required, but then also to be able to compete on that basis with those smaller companies and the point solutions, right? So being able to win those deals at the transactional level when that's appropriate, right?
Correct. I think with the competition that we're all facing here and there, really companies are rattling at all of the cages right now, and we need to compete on all levels at the end of it.
Can't count on any particular win before you've earned that win, right? Indeed, I'd like to suggest one sort of additional dimension to the value of AI with GDPR. We aren't able to track. We can actually create a tremendous amount of inferential analysis that can tell us very accurately what's going on without having to know this is Mark Weber, this is where he lives, this is what he's doing, who he works for, whatever it is. It's inferential based on a lot of analysis of what's happening, and then inform the sales team. Mark's or this user has done these 7 things, or inform the system. Maybe the best content to make available at this point is this particular use case or case study. And so that kind of AI, I think, to help the sales team better understand what's happening and better serve the customer, I think is a very powerful capability that already is playing a big role in a lot of the CRM systems and a lot of the ways that we're integrating with sales people, right?
Indeed. The vision that we have is having a AI that tells you based on the signals, regardless where the signal is coming from. Yeah. So I think we're not too far away from that vision, but it will be extremely interesting to see, especially and the countries are adopting the rules right now. So as an example, I think you've heard ChatGPT got shut down in Italy. And they have reopened it up with very clear distinctive rules now in place. There is a discussion happening in Germany right now. What kind of information should be allowed in these AI platforms going forward? But it will be interesting to see what the evolution is, how far you can actually go with all of that information, and then what are the boundaries that legal legislation is going to put in place here. But it's a highly dynamic time right now.
No question. And I think the power of the generative AI capability and other AI infrastructures is that highly personalized customer experience is going to be powered by AI in the future. Can we show visual interactivity dynamically so that not everybody gets to see exactly the same thing? And it's based on what other people are doing, but also what we've done individually. And I think that's going to be dramatically beneficial, even without and potentially because we don't have capability to know the specifics about those users.
I love it. To be honest, Gavin, I think that is truly the future. Highly personalized, well orchestrated information to a client based on the experience level where that client could be, and based on the signals that you can capture. And getting that in front of the client, I think that's going to be a real game changer here.
A metaphor that we're using in one of our internal discussions is we sometimes know, not we, the individuals, but the systems know what the pitfalls are. So it's like a parent holding a child's hand before they cross the road, preventing something that never happens because the parent knows what the potential is. And so the system could know and will know what the various right paths are and create that journey so that it's a proactive step in that process for that client.
It makes total sense.
Well, we could talk for another 6.5 hours, I think. In the interest of time, I wanted to thank the audience for joining us today. And most particularly, Mark, thank you for a very stimulating and educational experience for all of us.
Thank you, Gavin, for the invitation.